Have you ever stood in a place so small that the world barely notices it, only to discover that it once shaped the destiny of an entire civilization? Most travelers come to Bali searching for beaches, sunsets, luxury resorts, and tropical escapes. They chase the famous photographs they've already seen thousands of times across social media. They follow crowded paths that millions have walked before them. But very few realize that beyond those familiar destinations lies a land that tells a completely different story. A land where kings once ruled one of the most influential kingdoms in Indonesian history. A land where warriors chose honor over surrender. A land where ancient palaces still whisper the echoes of forgotten empires. A land where dramatic islands rise from the ocean like giant fortresses built by nature itself. This is Klungkung, the smallest regency in Bali, yet perhaps the greatest guardian of Bali's soul. At first glance, Klungkung seems almost insignificant. Covering only about 315 square kilometers, it is the smallest regency in the province of Bali. In 2024, its population reached approximately 222,763 people, making it the least populated regency on the island. Numbers alone would never convince anyone that this place once stood at the center of Balinese civilization, because history has never measured greatness by size. What makes Klungkung extraordinary is not how large it is how much history lives within its borders. Its capital, Semarapura, is not merely another Balinese town. It was once the beating heart of royal authority, culture, diplomacy, religion, and art across Bali. For centuries, decisions made here influenced kingdoms stretching across the entire island and beyond. The story of Klungkung is unlike any other place in Bali. Roughly 1/3 of its territory lies on Bali's mainland. The remaining 2/3 are scattered across the sea, forming one of Indonesia's most spectacular island groups, Nusa Penida, Nusa Lembongan, and Nusa Ceningan. These islands have become internationally recognized destinations, attracting visitors with towering limestone cliffs, crystal clear waters, vibrant coral reefs, manta rays, dramatic coastal landscapes, and beaches unlike anywhere else in Southeast Asia. Millions admire their beauty. Only a few understand that these islands are part of something much larger. They belong to Klungkung. Few regions in Indonesia combine royal history, sacred traditions, breathtaking landscapes, and heroic resistance as naturally as this one. Every stone here seems to remember something. Every temple carries generations of devotion. Every coastline has witnessed stories that transformed the island forever. Long before Bali became a global tourism icon, Klungkung had already established itself as one of the island's political and cultural centers. This was where kingdoms flourished. This was where royal traditions evolved. This was where Balinese identity continued to grow even through centuries of conflict and change. The regency proudly carries the nickname Gumi Serombatan. Its traditional motto comes from the ancient Javanese language, Dharmaning Ksatria Mahotama. It means that the duty of a noble warrior is the highest form of honor. This is not simply an inspiring phrase carved into official documents. It became a way of life. Throughout Klungkung's history, its people repeatedly demonstrated that dignity, loyalty, and courage were values worth defending, regardless of the cost. That philosophy would eventually become one of the defining chapters in Indonesia's struggle against colonial domination. But before we reach that extraordinary chapter, we must travel even further back, to a time when Bali was ruled by powerful kingdoms, to an era when royal courts shaped politics, religion, literature, architecture, and culture across the island. The roots of Klungkung stretch deep into the legacy of the Gel Kingdom, one of the greatest kingdoms Bali has ever known. During its golden age under Dalem Wataurenggong in the 16th century, the Kingdom of Gel became the dominant power across Bali. Its influence extended beyond the island itself. Historical records describe political relationships and influence reaching Lombok and parts of eastern Java, demonstrating just how significant the kingdom had become within the Indonesian archipelago. Gel was more than a royal capital. It became the center of Balinese civilization. Artists gathered there. Priests performed sacred ceremonies there. Architects designed magnificent palaces there. Royal advisors debated matters of governance there. Diplomats negotiated alliances there. And generations of noble families built a legacy that continues to shape Bali even today. Yet history rarely remains peaceful forever. Power attracts ambition. Ambition often leads to conflict. Internal struggles eventually weakened the once mighty Gel Kingdom.
Political unrest erupted, rivalries intensified. One of the kingdom's most powerful ministers, I Gusti Agung Maruti, launched a rebellion around the middle of the 17th century. The kingdom that had stood as Bali's greatest political force suddenly faced collapse from within. Its royal family scattered, its stability disappeared, its future became uncertain. Many believe the age of Gel had come to an end. But history has an extraordinary way of creating new beginnings from the ashes of fallen kingdoms. Among those determined to restore royal authority was a prince named Ida the Erst Dewa Agung Jambe. Supported by loyal nobles and military commanders, he fought to reclaim what had been lost. In 1686, his forces successfully defeated the usurpers and restored legitimate rule. Yet something had changed forever. Instead of rebuilding the old royal centre in Gel, the new king made a decision that would reshape Balinese history. He established a completely new royal capital farther north. That new capital became known as Semarapura, and with it, the Kingdom of Klungkung was born. The name Semarapura itself carries profound meaning. Derived from ancient Sanskrit traditions, it reflects ideals of beauty, prosperity, and noble leadership. The palace constructed there was not simply a residence for kings, it became the political heart of Bali. From this royal court, generations of rulers bearing the hereditary title Dewa Agung governed the kingdom. Unlike earlier monarchs who carried the title Dalem, the rulers of Klungkung established a distinct royal identity that symbolized continuity, legitimacy, and supreme authority. Their influence extended far beyond the palace walls. Even after Bali fragmented into multiple kingdoms such as Badung, Gianyar, Karangasem, Bangli, Buleleng, Tabanan, and Jembrana, the rulers of Klungkung continued to be widely regarded as the island's highest ceremonial authority. Their political power fluctuated over time. Their symbolic importance never disappeared. Across Bali, respect for the House of Klungkung endured. Its royal court remained a source of legitimacy. Its traditions preserved centuries of Balinese heritage. Its ceremonies reflected a civilization that refused to forget its origins. And although centuries have passed since those royal days, the spirit of Klungkung continues to live on in every temple courtyard, every cultural performance, every sacred ritual, and every generation determined to protect the identity of Bali.
The story, however, was only beginning, because beyond the rise of kings awaited invasions, beyond prosperity awaited sacrifice, and beyond the glory of the palace stood one of the greatest acts of courage ever witnessed in Indonesian history. For more than 2 centuries after its founding, the Kingdom of Klungkung stood as the spiritual and ceremonial heart of Bali. Although political authority across the island gradually became divided among several independent kingdoms, the rulers of Klungkung continued to command extraordinary respect. To many Balinese nobles, the Dewa Agung of Klungkung was not simply another king. He represented continuity with the glorious legacy of Gelgel, the kingdom that had once united Bali under a single royal house. Power, however, was changing across Southeast Asia. European colonial empires were expanding rapidly. The Dutch East India Company had already established influence throughout the Indonesian archipelago. After the company's collapse, the Dutch colonial government continued its mission to bring more kingdoms under its control. One by one, independent rulers across the islands faced increasing pressure. Trade agreements became political demands. Political demands became military threats. Military threats often ended in war. Bali was no exception. Unlike many regions that had already fallen under colonial administration, the Balinese kingdoms fiercely defended their independence. They protected not only their territory, but also their customs, religious traditions, and royal sovereignty. Among those kingdoms, Klungkung stood as one of the proudest. Its people believed that leadership was not merely inherited, it had to be earned through honor. This belief would soon be tested on the battlefield. One of the most important chapters began in a coastal village called Kusamba. Today, Kusamba is known for its traditional salt farming, peaceful shoreline, and fishing community. Centuries ago, it was one of the most strategic ports in Bali. Its location connected Klungkung with neighbouring islands and international maritime trade. Ships carrying merchants, diplomats and travellers regularly arrived along its coast, making Kusamba an economic lifeline for the kingdom. Control of Kusamba meant control of an important gateway to Bali. It was only a matter of time before foreign powers recognised its strategic value. Tensions between the Kingdom of Klungkung and the Dutch escalated during the 19th century. One of the immediate causes involved the long-standing Balinese practice known as Tawan Karang, a customary right that allowed coastal kingdoms to claim the cargo of shipwrecks stranded along their shores. To the Balinese, this tradition had existed for generations. To the Dutch, it threatened their commercial interests. Disagreements over this practice fueled diplomatic conflict. At the same time, Klungkung openly supported other Balinese kingdoms that resisted Dutch intervention. The colonial government viewed this as direct defiance. War became increasingly unavoidable. On 24th May 1849, Dutch forces launched a military campaign against Klungkung. Their soldiers landed near Padang Bai before advancing toward the kingdom's defences. The Balinese were ready. Under the leadership of Dewa Agung Istri Kanya and her commanders, warriors gathered to defend sacred sites and royal strongholds, including Goa Lawa and Kusamba. The Dutch possessed superior firearms, disciplined infantry, and extensive military experience gained from campaigns across the archipelago. The Balinese possessed something different, an unshakable determination to defend their homeland. The initial fighting was fierce. Despite their courage, Klungkung's defenders were eventually forced to retreat from Goa Lawa. Dutch troops succeeded in occupying Kusamba. For many commanders, losing such an important port would have signalled the end of the campaign. Not for Klungkung. As darkness fell, the Balinese leaders refused to accept defeat. Instead of surrendering, they prepared a daring counterattack. They understood the Dutch soldiers were exhausted after a full day of fighting. The invaders believed victory had already been secured. Their confidence became their greatest weakness. Before dawn on 25th May 1849, while darkness still covered the coastline, Balinese warriors silently surrounded the Dutch encampment inside the palace at Kusamba. The attack came without warning. Chaos erupted instantly. Confused by the darkness and unfamiliar surroundings, Dutch soldiers struggled to organize their defenses. Commands became difficult to hear. Visibility disappeared. Panic spread through the camp. Then came the moment that entered Balinese legend. Dutch commander Major General Andreas Victor Michiels stepped forward, attempting to assess the battlefield. Historical accounts describe how illumination rounds briefly lit the night sky. For a few moments, the battlefield became visible. That split second changed history. Balinese forces seized the opportunity. According to local tradition, one of Klungkung's sacred cannons, known as E Selisik, was fired toward the Dutch commander. Whether viewed through historical fact or cultural legend, the result is undisputed. General Michiels was critically wounded. Despite efforts to save his life, he died later that day. For the Dutch colonial army, the loss was devastating. Experienced generals were not easily replaced. Michiels had already earned a formidable reputation through successful military campaigns across the archipelago. His death shocked colonial authorities. Victories over European armies were already uncommon. The death of one of their highest commanders on the battlefield was even rarer. The price paid by Klungkung was enormous. Hundreds of Balinese warriors lost their lives. Many more suffered serious injuries. Entire communities bore the scars of the conflict. Yet their sacrifice carried profound meaning. It demonstrated that courage could stand against overwhelming power. It proved that determination could shake even one of Europe's strongest colonial empires. Although Dutch forces eventually regrouped and recaptured Kusamba in a later offensive, the Battle of Kusamba became one of Bali's greatest symbols of resistance. Its significance cannot be measured solely by military outcomes. It revealed something far more enduring. Freedom is never defended by weapons alone. It is defended by conviction. It is defended by people willing to sacrifice comfort, safety, and even life itself for principles they refuse to abandon. The warriors of Klungkung understood that some victories live beyond the battlefield. They knew future generations would remember not only who survived, but who stood firm when surrender seemed easier. That spirit would not disappear after Kusamba. Instead, it would grow even stronger. Less than 60 years later, Klungkung would once again face the Dutch. This time, the confrontation would become one of the most heartbreaking and unforgettable chapters in Indonesian history. It would forever be remembered by a single word: puputan. There are moments in history when a nation is defined not by victory, but by the courage to stand when defeat is certain. For Klungkung, that moment arrived in the spring of 1908. By the beginning of the 20th century, Dutch colonial control had expanded across much of the Indonesian archipelago. Kingdom after kingdom had fallen under colonial administration. One by one, independent rulers were forced to surrender their authority, accept unequal treaties, or submit to foreign rule. Yet Klungkung remained one of the final symbols of Balinese sovereignty. Although its political influence had diminished compared to the height of the Gelgel era, its moral authority remained immense. To many Balinese people, Klungkung was more than a kingdom. It was the last guardian of an ancient legacy. The Dutch understood this. They knew that conquering Klungkung was not simply a military objective. It was a symbolic victory. If Klungkung fell, the centuries-old political order of Bali would finally come to an end. Tensions escalated rapidly during April 1908. Following disputes with the colonial government, Dutch forces launched a full-scale military operation against the kingdom. On April 18th, conflict erupted around Gelgel. Just days later, Dutch warships appeared along Bali's southeastern coastline. Their arrival was overwhelming. Modern artillery, professional infantry, superior logistics, an army equipped with the latest military technology of its time. Against them stood a kingdom whose greatest strength was not its weapons, it was its spirit. Dutch troops landed near Kusamba before advancing towards Semarapura from multiple directions. They attacked from the east, from the west, from the south. Their strategy was clear: surround the capital, crush resistance, end centuries of Balinese independence once and for all. Inside the royal palace, King Ida I Dewa Agung Jambe faced an impossible decision. He could surrender and preserve his own life under colonial rule, or he could defend the dignity of his kingdom until the very end. For many rulers, survival would have seemed the logical choice, but the traditions of Klungkung measured leadership differently. Honor mattered more than power, duty mattered more than fear, freedom mattered more than life itself. The king made his choice. The royal family dressed not for surrender, but for ceremony. They wore white, the sacred color associated with purity and spiritual readiness. Nobles gathered, priests offered final prayers, warriors prepared themselves. Men, women, royal officials, faithful followers, even members of the royal household. They understood exactly what was about to happen. There would be no retreat, no negotiations, no escape. Only one path remained. The Balinese called it Puputan. The word literally means the end or the final finish. But its meaning reaches far beyond language. Puputan was a deliberate decision to fight until death rather than live under foreign domination. It was not an act of despair, it was an act of conviction. When the palace gates finally opened, the procession that emerged stunned the Dutch soldiers waiting outside. This was not a fleeing army. It was not a delegation carrying white flags. It was an entire royal court walking calmly toward overwhelming military force. At its front stood the king. Behind him came members of the royal family, nobles, priests, officials, attendants, citizens who chose to share the same destiny. Many carried ceremonial weapons, traditional kris, spears, swords, weapons that stood little chance against repeating rifles and artillery. Yet they continued walking, not with panic, not with hesitation, with dignity. Witnesses described an almost surreal silence before violence consumed the battlefield. The distance between the two sides grew shorter. Neither side could misunderstand what was unfolding. Then the shooting began. Gunfire shattered the silence. Bullets tore through the advancing procession. People fell. Others continued forward. Again and again, wave after wave refused to retreat. The battlefield became a place of unimaginable tragedy. Entire families died together. Royal advisors perished beside their king. Mothers refused to abandon their children. Warriors fought until they could no longer stand. By the end of the confrontation, nearly 200 Balinese had lost their lives. Some historical estimates suggest the number may have been even higher when surrounding casualties are included. The Kingdom of Klungkung had fallen, but its spirit had not. The Dutch achieved military victory, yet many of their own officers were deeply affected by what they had witnessed. This had not been an ordinary battle. It was unlike anything most European soldiers had ever seen. They had conquered a kingdom, but they could never erase the extraordinary courage displayed by its people. News of Puputan spread across Bali. It became a story passed from one generation to another, not because it ended in triumph, but because it revealed the extraordinary price people are sometimes willing to pay for their principles. For the Balinese,
Puputan became far more than a historical event. It became a symbol, a reminder that dignity cannot always be measured by survival. Sometimes it is measured by the values people refuse to surrender. Following the fall of Klungkung, Dutch colonial administration assumed direct control over the kingdom. The political landscape of Bali changed forever. The independent royal order that had shaped the island for centuries came to an end. Years later, members of the royal family would continue serving their communities under new administrative systems established during the colonial era and eventually within the Republic of Indonesia. But the age of kings ruling a sovereign Klungkung had closed. Even so, history refused to let the kingdom disappear. Its palaces remained, its temples endured, its traditions survived, its stories continued to inspire. Today, visitors who walk through Semarapura can still stand inside the grounds where those final moments unfolded. The historic Kertagosa Pavilion still displays magnificent ceiling paintings that illustrate justice, morality, and the consequences of human actions. Nearby stands the Puputan Monument, honouring those who chose sacrifice over submission. These are not merely tourist attractions, they are living classrooms. They remind every generation that freedom, identity, and culture are never inherited without cost. The stones of Klungkung still remember, the walls still whisper. And if you listen closely enough, they tell a timeless truth. Empires may conquer kingdoms, weapons may silence armies, but no force on earth can erase the memory of people who chose honour over fear. History did not end with the fall of the kingdom. In many places around the world, the collapse of a royal capital marks the beginning of decline. Palaces become ruins, traditions slowly disappear. The stories of great civilizations fade into silence. Klungkung chose a different path. Instead of allowing its identity to vanish, its people transformed memory into heritage. The royal courts no longer governed, but the culture they protected continued to flourish. Following Indonesia's proclamation of independence on the 17th of August 1945, Bali entered a new chapter as part of a sovereign nation. Administrative reforms gradually replaced the old royal system. Through Law No. 69 of 1958, the former self-governing territory of Klungkung officially became the regency of Klungkung within the province of Bali. The transition represented more than a change in government. It symbolized the resilience of a society capable of preserving its traditions while embracing the future. The descendants of the royal family no longer ruled as kings. Instead, many continued serving their communities through public leadership, cultural preservation, and civic responsibility. The values endured even as the political system evolved. In 1992, another important milestone arrived. The regency's capital officially became known as Semarapura, restoring the historic name that had once represented the royal capital founded centuries earlier by Dewa Agung Jambe. Every year on April 28th, the people commemorate the anniversary of Semarapura and remember the sacrifice of the Puputan Klungkung. For local communities, this is far more than a ceremonial celebration. It is a promise that history will never be forgotten. Yet Klungkung is not defined only by its past. It continues to write new chapters every single day. Geographically, Klungkung is one of the most fascinating regions in Indonesia. Its landscape is unlike any other regency in Bali. Only about 1/3 of its territory lies on the main island of Bali. The remaining 2/3 stretch across the sea, forming an extraordinary archipelago that has become famous around the world. These islands are Nusa Penida, Nusa Lembongan, and Nusa Ceningan. Today, they attract travellers from every continent. Yet what makes these islands remarkable extends far beyond their popularity on social media. Nusa Penida rises dramatically from the Indian Ocean, with towering limestone cliffs carved by millions of years of geological forces.
Its coastline appears almost unreal. Massive cliffs plunge directly into brilliant turquoise waters. Hidden beaches can only be reached by descending steep staircases carved into the rock. Powerful waves crash endlessly against ancient stone walls, shaped long before human civilization emerged. Among its most iconic landmarks is Kelingking Beach. From above, the cliff resembles the silhouette of a giant dinosaur reaching toward the sea. Its breathtaking viewpoint has become one of Indonesia's most photographed natural landscapes. Yet even the most spectacular photographs fail to capture its true scale. Standing there in person, visitors often experience something words struggle to describe: the vastness of the ocean, the sound of crashing waves echoing through the cliffs, the endless horizons stretching toward infinity. It is a reminder of how small human beings truly are. Not far away lies Broken Beach, known locally as Pasi Ug. Here, nature created a magnificent circular cove connected to the open ocean through a massive stone arch. Seawater continuously flows beneath the arch, creating one of the most unique coastal formations anywhere in Southeast Asia. Nearby, Angel's Billabong forms a natural infinity pool carved directly into limestone rock. During calm tides, crystal clear water reflects the sky like polished glass. At the right moment, it becomes one of the most beautiful natural pools on Earth. Beneath the surrounding waters lies another extraordinary world. Coral reefs filled with tropical marine life surround the islands. Manta rays with wingspans reaching several meters glide gracefully through the currents. Sea turtles swim among colorful reefs. Schools of tropical fish transform the ocean into a living mosaic of color. For divers and snorkelers, the waters surrounding Nusa Penida are considered among the finest marine ecosystems in Indonesia. These islands are not simply tourist destinations, they are part of one of the richest marine environments in the Coral Triangle, a region recognized as the global center of marine biodiversity. Conservation efforts continue to protect these fragile ecosystems, ensuring future generations can witness the same natural wonders that inspire millions today. Meanwhile, Nusa Lembongan offers a different rhythm. Life moves more slowly. Traditional seaweed farming continues alongside sustainable tourism. White sand beaches meet calm lagoons. Small fishing boats drift peacefully across crystal clear water. Sunsets paint the sky in brilliant shades of orange, crimson and gold. Just across a narrow yellow suspension bridge lies Nusa Ceningan. Though smaller than its neighboring islands, it possesses an undeniable charm. Hidden coves, blue lagoons, quiet coastal roads, dramatic cliff-jumping locations, and peaceful villages where Balinese traditions continue almost unchanged. Together, these three islands have transformed Klungkung into one of Indonesia's premier tourism destinations. But unlike many places where tourism overshadows local identity, Klungkung continues to protect its cultural roots. Temples remain active places of worship. Traditional ceremonies continue throughout the year. Ancient customs remain woven into daily life. Visitors are not simply observing history, they are witnessing a living culture that has survived kingdoms, colonialism, and modernization without losing its soul. That may be Klungkung's greatest achievement. Not that it built magnificent palaces, not that it fought legendary battles, not that it possesses breathtaking islands admired around the world. Its greatest achievement is that after centuries of triumph and tragedy, it still remembers exactly who it is. And in a rapidly changing world, that may be the rarest treasure of all. There is another side of Klungkung that many visitors never have the chance to discover. Beyond the famous cliffs of Nusa Penida, beyond the turquoise waters that fill millions of travel photographs, beyond the ancient palaces and heroic battlefields, there is the rhythm of everyday life. It is here that the true spirit of Klungkung quietly reveals itself. The majority of the people in Klungkung are Balinese Hindus, making up more than 95% of the population. Hinduism is not simply a religion here, it is a living philosophy that shapes the calendar, the architecture, the arts, and even the smallest routines of daily life. Every morning begins with offerings. Small woven trays crafted from coconut leaves are carefully filled with flowers, rice, incense, and prayers. Known as Chanang Sari, these offerings appear outside homes, temples, shops, schools, and offices. To many visitors, they are beautiful decorations. To the people of Klungkung, they are expressions of gratitude, a reminder that every new day is a blessing deserving of humility and respect. Throughout the year, the Regency comes alive with sacred ceremonies. Temple festivals unite entire communities. Families travel across villages to honor their ancestors. The sounds of traditional gamelan orchestras echo through temple courtyards. The fragrance of incense drifts into the air. Dancers dressed in elaborate costumes perform stories rooted in ancient Hindu epics that have been preserved for centuries. These traditions are not staged for tourists. They exist because they have always been part of life. One of Klungkung's greatest cultural treasures is its artistic heritage. For generations, the region has been famous for the classical Kamasan painting tradition. Originating in the village of Kamasan, this unique style of painting is among the oldest surviving visual art traditions in Bali. Unlike modern paintings that emphasize realism, Kamasan art tells stories. Scenes from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata unfold across long canvases. Kings, warriors, gods, demons, and celestial beings are illustrated with remarkable precision. Every gesture carries symbolic meaning. Every color reflects philosophical ideas. Every composition teaches moral lessons passed from one generation to the next. These paintings once decorated royal palaces, temples, and ceremonial halls across Bali. Even today, master artists continue preserving techniques that have remained largely unchanged for hundreds of years. Walking into a traditional Kamasan workshop feels like stepping into another century. Every brushstroke connects the present with an artistic legacy that has survived the rise and fall of kingdoms. Klungkung is also known for its remarkable craftsmanship. Wood carving, silver work, woven textiles, and ceremonial ornaments continue to support local livelihoods. Many families have passed their skills from parents to children for generations. These crafts are more than economic activities. They are living archives of Balinese identity. The Regency also plays an important role in Bali's traditional salt production. Along the coast of Kusamba, one of the island's oldest salt-making traditions continues today. Unlike large industrial operations, local farmers still harvest sea salt using methods refined over centuries. Seawater is carried by hand into specially prepared sand beds. After natural filtration and evaporation, the concentrated seawater is transferred into coconut trunks, where sunlight slowly transforms it into pure crystalline salt. The process requires patience, skill, and a deep understanding of nature. Every grain represents hours of careful work beneath the tropical sun. This traditional salt has earned recognition not only for its quality, but also for preserving a cultural practice that has nearly disappeared in many parts of the world. Agriculture remains another pillar of Klungkung's economy. Rice fields spread across parts of the mainland following irrigation systems inspired by Bali's famous Subak philosophy. Recognized by UNESCO as part of Bali's cultural landscape, the Subak system represents far more than irrigation engineering. It reflects cooperation, shared responsibility, harmony between humans, nature, and spirituality. Water is not viewed merely as a resource, it is considered sacred. Its distribution follows principles of fairness developed over centuries by farming communities working together rather than competing against one another. This philosophy has helped sustain agriculture across Bali for generations. In Klungkung, these values continue to guide rural life. Meanwhile, the surrounding seas provide another source of prosperity. Fishing communities leave before sunrise, returning hours later with fresh catches that support local markets and family businesses. Seaweed farming remains especially important around Nusa Lembongan and Nusa Cheningan. The cultivation of seaweed has supported thousands of households for decades, long before tourism became a major industry. Even as tourism has expanded, many families continue balancing traditional occupations with new economic opportunities. This balance between preservation and progress defines modern Klungkung. It embraces visitors from around the world, yet it refuses to lose the traditions that make it unique. Infrastructure continues to improve, education has expanded, healthcare services have grown, economic opportunities have diversified. At the same time, ceremonies continue. Ancient temples remain active, children still learn traditional dances, artists still paint stories of gods and heroes. Farmers still honor the rhythms of nature. The people of Klungkung understand something that many societies struggle to remember. Development does not have to erase identity. Progress does not require abandoning heritage. The future becomes stronger when it is built upon the wisdom of the past. Perhaps that is why Klungkung leaves such a lasting impression on those who truly experience it. It is not only because of its extraordinary landscapes, nor because of its remarkable history. It is because every corner of this regency reminds us that civilizations are not measured by the height of their buildings or the size of their economies. They are measured by what they choose to preserve, by the values they refuse to surrender, by the stories they continue to tell. And in Klungkung, those stories are still very much alive. They live in the sound of temple bells at sunrise. They live in the hands of artists painting ancient legends. They live in the salt farmers working beside the sea. They live in the fishermen navigating the morning tide. They live in every prayer, every offering, every dance, and every child growing up surrounded by a heritage that stretches back through centuries. This is why Klungkung is far more than a destination on a map. It is a living testament to the endurance of culture, a place where the past continues to illuminate the present, and where every new generation carries forward a legacy that refuses to fade. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson Klungkung has to offer the world. We live in an age that moves faster than any generation before us. Cities rise almost overnight. Technology reshapes the way we communicate. Artificial intelligence changes how we work. Entire industries evolve within a few years. Progress has become the defining language of modern civilization. Yet somewhere along the way, many societies have begun to confuse progress with forgetting. Historic buildings are replaced before their stories are understood. Ancient traditions disappear because they seem old-fashioned. Languages fade. Craftsmanship is abandoned. Communities slowly lose the very identity that once made them unique. Klungkung reminds us that true progress is not about replacing the past. It is about carrying the past into the future. That is why walking through Semarapura feels different from visiting an ordinary town. Every monument has meaning. Every temple has witnessed generations of worship. Every royal courtyard preserves memories of decisions that shape the destiny of Bali. Even silence feels different here, because silence itself carries history. Visit the magnificent Kerta Gosa. Stand beneath its beautifully painted ceiling. Look carefully at every panel. They are not random decorations. They are visual philosophies, stories about justice, responsibility, consequences, compassion, the balance between good and evil. Long before modern legal systems filled libraries with books, these paintings were already teaching rulers how justice should be exercised. The courtroom itself became a classroom. Power was constantly reminded that authority without morality eventually destroys itself. Few places in the world preserve such a remarkable union between governance, philosophy, religion, and art. Just a short distance away stands the floating pavilion of Balai Kambang. Surrounded by water, it appears almost suspended between earth and sky. Centuries ago, members of the royal family gathered here to discuss matters of state, receive distinguished guests, and conduct important ceremonies. Today, visitors can still admire its graceful architecture while imagining conversations that once determined the future of an entire kingdom. History does not feel distant here. It feels present. Travel farther across the regency and another remarkable transformation begins. The urban rhythm gradually gives way to quiet villages. Rice fields shimmer beneath the tropical sun. Palm trees sway gently with the ocean breeze. Children laugh as they ride bicycles along narrow village roads. Farmers continue tending fields using knowledge inherited through countless generations. There is no urgency, no unnecessary noise. Life unfolds according to natural rhythms that have guided these communities for centuries. Then the journey continues across the sea. As boats approach Nusa Penida, towering cliffs emerge dramatically from the horizon. From a distance, they resemble the walls of an ancient fortress protecting a forgotten kingdom. Closer still, the immense limestone formations reveal the incredible power of geological time. Millions of years of wind, waves, rain, earthquakes, and volcanic activity sculpted these islands into masterpieces no human architect could ever design. Every cliff tells the story of Earth itself. Every cave records the slow work of nature across unimaginable spans of time. Standing atop those cliffs, looking out toward the endless Indian Ocean, many visitors experience an overwhelming sense of perspective. Our daily worries suddenly feel smaller. Deadlines lose their importance. Arguments become insignificant. The ocean has a way of reminding us how brief a single human life truly is. Perhaps that is why places like Klungkung affect people so deeply. They reconnect us with something larger than ourselves. History reminds us where we came from. Nature reminds us how small we are. Culture reminds us who we can become. Together, they create an experience that cannot be measured by photographs alone. That is why millions of images shared online never fully capture Klungkung. A camera can record scenery. It cannot capture atmosphere. It cannot preserve the emotion of hearing evening prayers echo across ancient temples. It cannot recreate the feeling of watching sunrise illuminate the cliffs of Nusa Penida. It cannot translate the quiet pride in the eyes of an artisan whose family has practiced the same craft for generations. Some places must be experienced with more than your eyes. They must be experienced with your heart. For Indonesia, Klungkung represents something profoundly important. It demonstrates that greatness does not depend on population. It does not depend on territory. It does not depend on economic size. The smallest regency in Bali became one of the greatest guardians of Balinese civilization. Its kings influenced history. Its warriors inspired generations. Its artists preserved culture. Its people protected traditions that continue to enrich Indonesia today. That is an extraordinary achievement.
For the world, Klungkung offers another message. Modern tourism often encourages people to travel quickly, collect photographs, visit famous landmarks, move on to the next destination. Klungkung invites something different. Slow down, listen, learn, respect. Because every destination has stories that deserve to be heard before they are photographed. Every culture deserves understanding before judgment. Every community deserves appreciation before consumption. When travellers approach Klungkung with curiosity rather than haste, they discover far more than beautiful landscapes. They discover resilience. They discover wisdom. They discover a society that has survived political upheaval, colonial conquest, natural challenges, and rapid modernisation, while remaining remarkably faithful to its identity. Few places accomplish that. Even fewer accomplish it with such quiet dignity. Perhaps one day, long after memories of crowded beaches begin to fade, visitors will remember something else entirely. The peaceful sound of temple bells carried by the wind, the ancient paintings inside Kerta Gosa, the emerald rice fields stretching toward distant mountains, the breathtaking cliffs rising above turquoise seas, the courage of warriors who refuse to surrender, the determination of artists who refuse to let tradition disappear, the humility of ordinary people who continue preserving extraordinary heritage, because those are the memories that endure, not because they are loud, but because they are meaningful. And perhaps that is the true identity of Klungkung. It never needed to become the largest. It never needed to become the richest. It never needed to become the busiest. It simply remained true to itself. And sometimes that is the greatest victory any civilization can ever achieve. So the next time someone tells you that Bali is only about beaches, luxury resorts, and tropical sunsets, remember this small regency on the island's eastern edge. Remember the kingdom that once stood at the heart of Balinese civilization. Remember the people who chose honour over surrender. Remember the islands where nature reveals some of its greatest masterpieces. Remember the culture that continues to breathe through every prayer, every ceremony, every work of art, and every generation that refuses to let its history disappear. Because Klungkung is not just a place you visit. It is a story you carry with you long after you leave. And once you truly understand its story, you will never see Bali the same way again. And that is the remarkable paradox of Klungkung. The smallest regency in Bali carries one of the largest legacies. It occupies only a fraction of the island's land, yet it holds centuries of memories that helped shape the identity of an entire civilization. Every generation leaves behind something for the next. Some leave monuments, some leave inventions, some leave prosperity. The people of Klungkung left something even more valuable. They left an example that courage is meaningful even when victory seems impossible, that culture deserves protection even when the world is changing, that history is not a burden to carry, it is a foundation upon which the future is built. Across Indonesia, there are thousands of beautiful destinations, towering volcanoes, ancient rainforests, pristine coral reefs, historic cities, magnificent temples. Each has its own story. But Klungkung reminds us that the most extraordinary places are often the ones that speak quietly. They do not demand attention, they earn it. For young Indonesians, Klungkung offers an important lesson.
Your heritage is not something to be remembered only during national holidays. It is something to be understood, studied, protected, shared with pride. Every traditional dance performed today exists because someone refused to let it disappear. Every ancient manuscript survives because someone believed knowledge was worth preserving. Every temple still standing exists because generations cared enough to maintain it. Every cultural tradition that continues today is the result of countless ordinary people making extraordinary choices across hundreds of years. Culture does not survive by accident. It survives because people choose it.